Hey everyone, it is Vickie Magic here with our podcast today, Wake Up to What Matters. And today we have my beautiful longtime friend, Anna James. Welcome, Anna.
Thanks, Vickie. It's nice to be here.
So, Anna, to begin with, I'd really like to invite you just to share a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background, and I guess a little bit about how your life completely turned upside down at the end of last year.
Certainly. Thanks, Vickie. Well, I've been married to Rodney for 34 and a half years. We have three beautiful children, two girls and a son, Tyler. And we're all originally from Mudgee, all born in Mudgee, and moved to Queensland about 20 years ago and lived the typical Queensland life, beaching and things like that. And then now our kids are all grown and I run my own business, and 2020, like for most people, was a pretty bad year. It was a lot of hard work, had just 20 days off. And on one particular Monday morning, I got up at 3:30 in the morning to go do some work because one of my team was having the day off. And I noticed somebody at the front gate and woke right up, and we rang the police, and turns out it was the police, and they were there to tell us that our son Tyler had died, and furthermore they said that he'd taken his own life. So in that instant, my brain just shut down, I think, absolutely shut down, and our lives were completely turned upside down. It was such a shock for everyone, I think, not just for us, for Rod and I and the girls, but for everyone who knows us. It was a huge shock, and it took us months to get out of where we were at that point in time, and still working through it. But yeah. So that's what happened.
Yeah, my God. Absolutely devastating for any parent to lose a child. I mean, it's not meant to happen that way. We always think that it's going to be the opposite way. And obviously, having known Tyler myself since he was a very young boy, it was devastating for our family as well, with, you know, my son Jamie being friends with Tyler back in that earlier time. So I guess one of the reasons that I did invite you to come on the podcast today is I can imagine that there's other people out there that, you know, potentially have had similar or worse or you know, the same kind of thing happen. And like you said, you're not through it, and potentially it's not something one ever gets over.
No.
Ever. And of course, that's the case. But I guess what I'd like to invite you to share is what kind of things you have done to help yourself come through this.
Well, one of the first things I did, obviously, was I turned to my friends and, you know, messaged yourself at, I think, 5 a.m. in the morning. You know, we rang all our friends, we rang all our family, and I can remember the first thing you said to me was, "I'll come down." And I remember thinking, "Oh, I don't want to put Vickie out. I don't want to put Vickie out." And then I just thought, I remembered our friendship, and something you once said to me is, I wouldn't offer if I didn't want to do it. And so I just went, yes, please come down. And my sister as well, Louise, she jumped on a plane from Cairns, and she was there by 1 o'clock that afternoon. And I just remember now, the first thing I did was to accept help where it was offered. And I think that was very important. We all think that we're putting people out, but when you're in that particular place, you really need to just accept help. Just accept it with the love that is being shown to you, and that's what I did. So I just started accepting help. Friends of ours bought us a week of groceries. And I just went, yes, please, thank you. Your sister Julie, who lovingly cooked dinner for us that first night. And normally I would have gone, oh, she doesn't have to do that. But I just went, yes, that's wonderful. Thank you. And I think accepting help where it's offered with gratitude and not thinking that you owe the person something. Don't feel guilt about owing that person something. They're doing this because they love you and they want to help you. And the fact that they're helping you and you're allowing that is thanks enough for them, I think. I still, of course, always thank people, but yeah, but without the guilt of, oh my goodness, that person put themselves out for me.
Yeah, because that's the truth, isn't it? A lot of times we sort of go, oh no, I don't want to put that person out, or I don't want to be a burden, or that sort of thing. But the thing is that accepting that help potentially really was a really good thing for you, wasn't it? So share how accepting that help did help you.
I think it was the letting go of the reciprocation, the feeling, the beating the oneself up about not reciprocating immediately. It allowed me time to process what had happened, because the death of a child, and in particular, I should point out here that Tyler didn't actually take his own life, as we found out many months later. But when you're in that moment where you have been told that it is a suicide as well, it's very traumatic. It's extremely traumatic for a parent, for anybody, but I can only speak as a parent. And so my brain wasn't processing things. So I think by not overloading my brain with the monkey mind of, well, you really need to pay this person back for what they've done for you. Just accepting gracefully and being thankful and being grateful releases you to do what you need to do, which is to grieve. And that is so important, because if you don't allow yourself to grieve and you don't look after yourself in that grieving time, you won't get back some of the mental bandwidth that you used to have. And that's the problem with grieving, is that even though you may not be thinking about the person you've lost, you still can't think. You're still in a fog, and it is part of the trauma process of your brain learning to think again, to process what's happened, and learning to think again, but with this different background, if you like, of for me, of Tyler not being there anymore. So yeah, and I think that's what it was. It basically released me to do what I needed to do, which was to grieve.
Yeah. And on that note as well, and obviously it's a known fact that everybody grieves at their own pace, everybody grieves differently, and there's not a rule book attached to it as well. So I guess what I want to invite you, and obviously the whole idea of this podcast, is to encourage people and inspire people to, I guess, get through situations. And one of those situations is grief. And so I would like to invite you to share some of the tools, I guess, that you used that haven't helped you through, but are helping you through, because it's not like we've, keep saying, it's not on this date I'll be over this, because it's never going to be that way. But I'd really like to invite you to share some of the tools that are helping you and have helped you up until now.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously self-care, and that is to get lots of rest and to drink lots of water. I found that out very early on from a Facebook group that I was in for parents of who've lost children, as the brain needs to be able to process, and that's where the rest and the water come in. The other thing was to take time out to meditate and to try and connect with the universe. And so I found myself listening to books about people who've gone to the other side and come back, and that brought me great comfort, because when they described what the other side was like, and I knew that Tyler was in a very good place. the other thing was with the people around you as well, because there is certainly within the family, as you said, there's different stages of grieving, and we all have to interact and make decisions as a family, which is what we did. And so it was basically stepping back and not taking anything anyone said personally. And that's keeping in mind that the 256 bits, that their perception of what is going on is different to your perception, that their perception of, particularly with suicide, of why it happened is different to your perception. They for my children, you know, they all lived together apart from us, away from us, their parents, us, and so they had different things happen in their lives, and so it was a case of just letting their perception be different to mine, and not feeling that their perception was wrong. I might think it's wrong, but I can't keep thinking that, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
because it is their perception.
Yeah. So, and no one's perception is wrong, because perception's just a personal thing. So how I perceive something is right in how I perceive it, even though it's different to how you might perceive it, or how someone else might. And sometimes that is a really hard thing to grasp, isn't it? That we don't all actually see the same thing in the same way. And it's hard for us sometimes to understand how people don't see something the same as us. But I think that what you just said is really helpful for people to actually allow and accept other people's perceptions different, and really not see them as wrong, really just see them as different. So yeah, congratulations on that, because that's not an easy thing to do.
No, and especially not in that particular circumstance, because you aren't thinking clearly, and
neither are
they.
People.
That's it. Yeah. And that's one thing to remember too, is that it comes back to that 256 bits. None of us are thinking clearly, so none of us are able to really. It's not the time to be dragging up the past, and it's always good just to get through the grieving process as much as you can.
And are there any other sort of tools and things that you think you're really glad that you learnt, that you've been able to utilize in this situation as well?
There are so many. I
guess one of the things that I have noticed with you, and obviously having known you, over 20 years, is that, 20 years ago, you were probably more of a person that would see what's wrong around them more so than what's right, and not to a really, negative degree. But I think that having watched you grow over this 20-year period, I think that you're way more capable now of seeing for, almost a silver lining in things, and seeing and being grateful for not what's wrong, but being grateful for what's right. So would that be something that has really helped you as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think what in the days following Tyler's death, what really struck me and still sticks out is the love that we received. And I think that 20 years ago, 1990s Anna would probably have just seen her pain and that was it. Whereas 2020 Anna saw the love that was coming to us from so many people. We were actually blown away by that. And I think because of the work that we've done over the last 20 years with yourself and just on ourselves as well, our minds were open to that, and it actually made us feel better because we didn't feel so alone, and because our hearts were open to receiving love, we got way more than we expected, and it still blows us away. we got flowers from a lot of my clients. We got hampers of food from business friends of mine. We got flowers from some lovely people who weren't even clients of ours. We were just talking to them about becoming a client, and they sent us flowers. So this is the kind of love that we were receiving, and over the years, the business has it's been hard work, and at times I've really resented it, but it showed me there and then that the 15 years of work that I've put in building the business paid back, because all these people were thinking of us in this particular time, and that was, we were just so much more open. The other thing that I'd done too was to part of this whole growing was to let go of some of the control freak that I used to be as well, because by being such a pessimist, and by looking at what's wrong instead of what's right, I wouldn't let my team do anything, so everything was down to me. So in the last 12 months, I'd done a lot of work in sort of delegating work off to my team, and I had to take 3 months off my business. I could, up to then, the most I'd had off was like a week, maybe 2 weeks at Christmas time. I had 3 months where all I did was the pays. That was it. I didn't do any billing. I didn't answer any calls. And because I had stepped back and let my team take the lead during the year, the business kept going. So it really was all about that, letting go of the self, letting go of the ego. And when we opened up our hearts, that's everything we got back. And
so in one way, that's kind of a little bit of a silver lining as well, in that this happening has actually shown you that you don't have to be the one every single day driving the business, that in fact your team were able to step in and run the business for you for that 3 months.
Yes.
And the business didn't go down in that time, did it?
No, it didn't. In fact, it started to grow.
Yeah.
And we started to bring on more and more clients. So I'm taking 3 weeks off very soon, because I want the business to grow again. So.
And because now that that's actually something that can happen. So thank you, Tyler, in a way.
Yes.
In
a way, yes.
I know. I'm saying in a way.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from.
Saying that sometimes it is important, at least to look for, the silver linings and things that may have come from this that are good. And of course, I don't mean in any way, shape or form that we're glad that it happened, because none of us ever will be. No. But is there anything else that you can think of that has actually come out of it that's been a good thing?
I think Rod and I certainly have taken the approach that life's too short. Yeah. Obviously, Tyler was only 26, and we fully expected to, be nursing his children, possibly even his grandchildren. So life's very short, and we spend our lives, and certainly Rod and I last year spent most of the year working our butts off. And we've actually made the decision now that we're not going to do that anymore. So every month we go away. We pack up and we go somewhere for a long weekend. And we've actually this year, even though we had a number of months where we didn't go anywhere, we probably had 5 or 6 weekends where we've actually gotten away, which is probably more than the previous 2 years combined of when we got away. So it's certainly given us a broader perspective on our life, and that it's not all about working for the man or working to get money in. It's about enjoying life and enjoying what's out there, not just what's in your house.
And really valuing, I suppose, relationships and how important they are.
Absolutely. We could never have gotten through it if we hadn't done the work that we've done. because, you know, I had all of my learnings from the Magic sisters that, as you know, I've been imparting to Rod along the way, and he was therefore more receptive when I would say to him, it's okay, or this is temporary, like trying to convince him that this is not the end of the world, that this is temporary. Everything we're going through is temporary.
Yeah. Because at some stages, I'd be sure that at some stages it did feel like the end of the world, you know, in that moment. Yeah.
Well, you saw me for those first 2 days, absolutely inconsolable, unable to sleep, waking up and just remembering that he was gone. And then that's it. It's like, yeah, there's nothing to describe it. And I would hate anybody else to have to go through it to understand it. But yeah, it's just simply that, well, the grieving will never go away, but we're not sitting there constantly grieving, and everything we're going through in any particular time is temporary. Yeah. And so basically, teaching Rod some of those things, and I think that's helped him. So yes.
Yeah, cool. And so if you're open to sharing this, you have said during this podcast that initially the police told you that Tyler had taken his own life, but that you've since found out that that's not the case. Can you share that? Can you share how you found out that, or how they found out, why they thought it was this way, and why you now absolutely believe that that wasn't the case?
Tyler was he was down the Gold Coast, and he had a big night out, and there was CCTV footage of him, of the moments before he died. And I think that the police just sort of felt that that was the most likely explanation. And I talked with my brother, who was very close to Tyler, and my daughters, and there were just a few other things that we had seen that basically didn't add up. Not that I thought the police were lying. No, they weren't lying, but as his family, those things didn't add up. Yeah. Depressed people don't always kill themselves, and people who kill themselves aren't always depressed. Yeah. So I think that, you know, any depression that was there wasn't sufficient he was deeply depressed, but it wasn't sufficient for him to do what he did. Yeah. And there were just things that I found, like his keys were in his bag. My brother, you know, said that Tyler had taken up subscriptions recently. There was just no indication.
Not things you would do if that was your intention.
And he was still taking his meds. Yeah. And
the fact that he had been drinking could easily have meant that he accidentally fell. Yeah, that's right.
That's right. And then when we got the coroner's report just a couple of months ago, it took 7 months to get that. Yeah. The coroner couldn't find the coroner couldn't decide whether it was intentional or not. Yeah. But from the description the coroner gave, it told us exactly what we thought, that Tyler had fallen, unfortunately. Yeah. It's tragic, and I wish I could go onto that balcony and just pull him back. Yeah. But that can't happen. That'll never happen. Yeah. But I also think when I made my decision, it was probably about February, March, I came to the conclusion in my mind, Tyler did not take his own life. Yeah. And I remember at that point in time, as soon as I made the decision, this weight just lifted off me. Yeah. It was, the heaviness was gone. Yeah. And it wasn't because I felt relief for myself. I just think that I felt relief for Tyler, because I think Tyler would never have done that to his sisters. Yeah. That's just not something he would do to them. And I think that he felt that if we thought that, then that was something that was heavy on him. Yeah. But my decision, to me, I felt that the weight of that lifted off me. And I just felt,
Yeah, I really felt that for you as well. And yeah, I 100% agree with the conclusion that you guys have come to. So in conclusion, is there anything else that you can sort of think of that you'd really like to share to help somebody who might be grieving or who might be feeling pain themselves, that you might be able to share with them, that they might be able to find a way through, or a way not over, because like we said, that's not ever going to happen, but I guess it can dull the pain a little, can't it?
It can. And one of those, probably the most important thing for anybody who is grieving or who is in particular pain, is to just let yourself be in that pain, just to sit with it and not to fight it, because quite underlying it all, it is your brain processing. So not even getting spiritual about it, it's a physical thing that has to happen. Your brain has to process it. And whilst you resist it, it's going to make it even that much harder. So now if I have a bout of what we call a grief wave, I just let it happen. Yeah. I just say to people, I'm having a bad week, step back, let it happen, and work my way through it. But
that's
the other
such good advice, because what you resist persists. And if you do just allow, and if you do just sit inside of a pain, in some instances, it actually does allow that wave to go through. But if you're fighting against the wave, it can't go through, can it?
That's right. That's right. It's not going to. Your brain is. It's up here. It's what your brain's doing, and you've got to let your brain do its job, because without that, you will end up with issues later on. Yeah. There was one more thing I just wanted to share as well. Yeah. And I know we talked about this before the podcast, and that is for the people on the outside looking at the person on the other side, the person who's grieving. I just wanted to say to people who might have a friend who is in this particular situation, there is nothing that you can say that will heal them, nothing that will take away their pain, but you should try to say something anyway, because it is knowing that people care enough to take the time to say, I don't know what to say, just know I love you. That really helps. Well, it certainly helped us. It certainly helped us that people didn't ignore our pain, that they acknowledged it, and that they did what they could to let us know.
Yeah, so I love that too, because you hear so often people say, oh, I haven't reached out because I didn't know what to say. But yeah, from the other side, and I would assume that a lot of people would feel this way, something, just hey, thinking of you, hey, love you. There's no words, because there are no words. Nobody can take away that pain. Nobody can heal you. But people can certainly show you love, and that's true. So thank you so much for sharing today. I know that it wasn't an easy thing for you to do, so I'm really grateful for you for doing that, because I know that there's a lot of people that potentially will hear some of the things that you've shared and get some relief themselves from that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Vickie. It was lovely.
Absolute pleasure.